He shielded the alien princess from the blast, only to wake amid strangers who called him their hero. The first thing Cale remembered was fire. Not the gentle crackle of a hearth or the welcoming warmth of a campfire, but the bone-searing eruption of an explosion ripping through the metallic corridors of the diplomatic outpost. He hadn't thought. He hadn't calculated. His instincts had simply hurled him forward when he saw the plasma grenade bounce to rest at the alien princess's feet. The next thing he remembered was pain. White-hot. Splinters of shrapnel embedding in his chest and side as his body shielded hers. He thought he heard her cry out his name, though he barely knew her. Then the sound fractured, and the world went black. The beginning. The outpost of fragile peace. Cale Rin was not a hero. At least, not in his own eyes. He was a soldier long past his prime, assigned to the outpost orbiting Zalera 4, a neutral station where humans and the alien Lutheri attempted, often in vain, to negotiate peace. Years of skirmishes had scarred the void between their worlds, and diplomats cloaked their hatred in formal smiles. Cale's role was simple: stand guard, maintain order, and keep the peace from shattering before the talks could even begin. The Lutheri fascinated him. Tall, lithe beings with luminescent skin and eyes that shimmered like liquid silver. They moved with a grace humans could never imitate, and though they considered humanity crude and brash, a select few seemed willing to bridge the gap. Princess Erin was one of them. She was younger than Cale expected, with sharp wit and a gaze that pierced like a blade. She asked him questions when the other Lutheri nobles ignored him. She laughed at his dry humor when diplomats argued. She seemed genuinely curious about humanity's resilience, about the scars Cale bore from forgotten battles. In her presence, Cale felt something he hadn't in years: purpose. But that purpose turned to chaos the night of the blast. A faction opposed to the treaty had infiltrated the station. Cale had only a second to notice the intruder fling the grenade before it rolled to the princess's feet. And without hesitation, he threw himself over her. Then silence. The middle. Awakening in a strange place. When Cale's eyes flickered open, the world was wrong. He was not in the outpost's medbay. He was lying on a bed woven from pale threads that glowed faintly. The air smelled of clean ozone, tinged with the fragrance of something floral, alien yet calming. His body screamed with pain as he sat up, clutching bandages wrapped tightly around his torso. And then he noticed them. Figures surrounded him, Lutheri men and women, not dressed as soldiers or nobles, but as common citizens. Their silver eyes watched him with reverence. Some bowed. Some placed their hands over their hearts. And when he tried to speak, a woman whispered in awe, "He lives. The human who shielded our princess' lives." Cale blinked. "Where am I?" They told him. He was no longer on the neutral outpost. He had been transported to the surface of Zalera 4 itself, deep within the palace city of Letharian. He had crossed the divide no human soldier ever had. And in saving Princess Erin, he had become something else entirely, a symbol. The hero he never asked to be. In the days that followed, Cale struggled to make sense of his new reality. Everywhere he went in Letharian, people whispered his name. Citizens who once spat curses at humans now nodded with respect. Children followed him, eyes wide, asking to see the scars he had earned in battle. To them, he wasn't Cale Rin, the tired soldier with aching joints and fading pride. He was the shield of the princess. But Cale did not feel like a hero. The blast haunted his dreams. He remembered the flash, the pain, the fear. He remembered thinking he would die. And he remembered the look in Erin's eyes just before the world went black. Not fear, but sorrow. The princess herself visited him often. She thanked him with words more formal than her usual tongue, But behind her regal composure, he saw guilt. "You should not have been the one to suffer," she said one evening as the twin moons of Zolera rose over the palace gardens. "The burden was mine to bear." Kale shook his head. "That's not how it works. You don't stop to think about burdens when someone's life is on the line." Her silver eyes softened. "And that is why they call you a hero." He wanted to argue, but the word lodged in his throat. Rising tensions. The peace talks had collapsed in the wake of the attack. The outpost lay in ruins, and both human and Lutheri factions accused the other of staging the blast. Kale's survival, however, had complicated matters. He became a living contradiction, a human soldier celebrated by Lutheri citizens. His existence disrupted centuries of distrust, giving hope to some and fury to others. Not all welcomed him. Within the palace, whispers spread. Certain nobles accused Erin of orchestrating the event, claiming she sought to manipulate her people by placing a human savior at the center of their struggle. Others called for Kale's expulsion, fearing his presence would embolden radicals. And Kale himself was torn. Part of him wanted to leave, to return to the shadows where he belonged. But another part, the part that looked into Erin's determined gaze, wanted to stay. Because he sensed the danger wasn't over. The attack in the shadows. Weeks later, as he walked the palace gardens at night, Kale's soldiers' instincts prickled. The shadows moved wrong. His hand reached for a weapon he no longer carried, but before he could react, figures lunged. Assassins. Lutheri, masked, wielding blades that shimmered with energy. Kale fought like a man possessed, using raw instinct, grabbing a fallen staff to parry. Pain seared his side, but he refused to fall. Because behind him, watching in horror, was Erin. Again, her life was the target. Again, his body became the shield. By the time guards arrived, 3 assassins lay unconscious, and Kale stood barely breathing, blood seeping through his bandages. The court was shaken. This was no accident. Someone within the Lutheri elite wanted Erin dead, and Kale silenced. The revelation. It was during his recovery that Erin revealed the truth. The grenade on the outpost had not been thrown by human rebels at all. It had been planted by a faction of Lutheri who opposed peace, who believed their people's superiority was threatened by union with humanity. "You nearly died," Erin said, voice trembling with rare vulnerability, "because of our own betrayal." Kale clenched his fists. "Then we stopped them. Together." She looked at him, astonishment breaking into a faint, weary smile. "You speak as if you are one of us." He hesitated. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to let good people die for someone else's ambition." The final confrontation. The conspirator struck during the Festival of Unity, when Lutheri citizens gathered beneath the twin moons. Cloaked in ceremonial armor, Kale stood beside Erin, his presence both symbolic and practical. When the attackers emerged, firing into the crowd to shatter hope, Kale didn't think. He moved. He led. He rallied guards, shielded innocents, and fought with a ferocity born not from duty, but from conviction. And when the last of the assassins was subdued, the square erupted not in fear, but in chants. "Hero. Hero of Lutherian." Kale stood bleeding, exhausted, but alive. Erin's hand gripped his arm, steadying him. "You have given them more than safety.